welcome to my guide on how to do archery, like from my memory from like my class 6 years ago. So I'm sure it'll be 100% accurate, and no one can prove me otherwise. So the first step to archery is have equipment. Um, Clearly, I've done that. I have the floor for holding my arrows. I have my bow and my janky target. It's lost most of the color, but that's fine. Who needs it? Um, so step two is look at your target and notice that it's there. See, here's an example. That's my target right over there. So yeah, and second step is to get into the position you're going to shoot at. I'll mark it with this bucket. Yeah, this is where I'm going to shoot at for uh, you know reference or whatever. So something before you shoot is probably you should have string wax, or also called bow resin, uh, which is actually also what they use for violins. Actually, I don't know if it's the same thing, but they call it the same thing. This is my string wax, and this basically can prevent your bow, your air, or your string on your bow from snapping, and you know snapping you into the next life or whatever. Um, so because this thing, if it broke, it could probably go through a concrete wall. Um, because of, or not this thing, but some bows uh, have a tight enough string wound that they could um, go through a concrete wall, and I don't want that to happen. I'm not a concrete wall. I'd break easier. Um, so once you've applied it to all the strings, or all the colored parts of the strings, there are little bits here that you can see that are darker or a different texture, and you don't want to apply the string wax to those. Um, but uh, parts are these parts are the only parts that you do. Are the in my case striped uh, parts of the string. So you rub it up and down and stuff until it gets hot. Okay, so I have my bow waxed. But before I start shooting, I'm going to explain some of the concepts of like the actual components of the things that I'll be using. This right here, this little plastic thingy, is called the rest. It's where you place arrows um, on when you're shooting. You'll just set them like that, and they should balance. Sometimes they'll fall off, and you can just put them back on while you're firing. Um, and this is called. What is this called? I don't know. It's called something. And here, I'll give it a name. This is called the thingy. What a great name. Uh, you put the arrow underneath of it, and or sometimes you can have two thingies, and you'll put it in between. But the arrow will automatically like kind of stabilize in this point and try and go up higher. So if you have it above the arrow, then the arrow will start going up the string kind of. Okay, so sorry for the weird cut, but this the thingy. I just explained that there are two of them. Sometimes on some bows, and you want them. Uh, you want it in between if there are two, and if there's just one, you want it below, like this. You knock it like this. And when you're knocking an arrow, you want um, these things on the fletchings or feathers, depending on the kind of bow you're using. You want the odd colored vein out, So, and by out I mean towards you. Well, I guess if you're right-handed, then it's towards you. Away from the bow though, away from this string, like this. See, I have my odd-colored fletching aiming towards me or towards my hand. So if I'm going to fire, then I want it like this all the time. For the actual steps on how to shoot the bow, number one is to it's to identify your target. I said that earlier. There it is. Okay. Step number two is to have your stance ready. So sometimes there will be a line depending on if you're shooting on an actual archery place. I don't have a mine, so I'm using this random pink bucket that I just found. But you want your feet on both sides of the line. 1 foot on each, obviously. I don't think people have more than 2 feet generally. But anyway, the next step is to grip your bow. And I have it. I have gripped my bow right here with my hand. If you are left-handed, then you use your right hand. If you are right-handed, you use your left hand. I am right-handed, so I am using my right hand. The next step is to is it a line? No. I'll get an arrow next. Yeah, next step is to get an arrow. You bring it generally if you have your bow in the same spot, which is when you want what you want when you're shooting bees. Not when you're shooting bees. It would be very difficult to hit a bee with an arrow. But you grab an arrow. If you're shooting like this, you generally want to keep your bow up so it's not you're not moving way over every time and having to reconfigure aim. You then knock the arrow. I'm knocking it below the thingy, and with the odd color vein out towards me, I raise my bow. That's the next step. I have it like this. You don't need a tight grip. In fact, it's probably a bad idea to have one. So a way to do it is just to have your thumb and index finger touching like this, making a little circle around the bow. And sometimes I use my middle finger as well. I'll connect them all. I'll draw, which is what this is called. My finger comes back to the corner of my mouth while I'm drawing. Yeah. So typically you'll want to go and aim about a quarter down the target for your first arrow at least. If it is too far off, then you want it to be more. But I didn't explain a couple of things in there. I just realized. So I'll shoot another to demonstrate this dirto is really airy. I meant to say that correctly, but I failed. So I again have this below the thingy and odd colored vein. I didn't say the rest of that sentence. Odd colored vein toward me or away from the bow. You raise the bow. You draw. Actually, yeah. I forgot to explain this. The next step is people call it setting the hook, which is this. This is the hook. I don't know. So you set the hook, which is putting 3 fingers underneath of the arrow and the thingy. You don't want it right against it, obviously, because you're sending it like at stinking 50 miles an hour away from you, and you don't want to, be anywhere in the way of that. So you don't be anywhere in the way of that. So you draw, and then I will release. But you see, my hand just went right up here, so like in this position for some reason. That's the archery. That's the archery position. I don't know. That's what you do in archery. Is you bring once you've released the bow, you bring your finger, actually your whole hand, to your shoulder, because if you release and then go, you know, you're not trying to shoot over there. But you okay. So last thing I want to explain is or last couple of things. One is dry firing. When you have your bow, as you can see, I don't have an arrow with this. I am going to pull it back to the corner of my mouth and whatever. I don't, it doesn't matter when you don't have an arrow in it, obviously. But you never want to release this because the arrow smooths the release of the string, so it doesn't like when it releases, the arrow will be shooting that way. But if the string is going like this, it'll wobble back and forth really fast, and it can damage the actual string of the bow like a lot faster. So you don't want to dry fire because, as I said, you're not a concrete wall. Um, so that's something you don't want to do. Another thing is, uh, well, one thing is um, when you're firing, you want if you have your hand like this, and you do because this is how you hold the bow. But you, when you hold the bow like this, when I pull back, uh, I'll show you with another arrow. So when you pull back, the arrow releases like the arrow releases, uh, and the string can also wobble around. And when it's wobbling and releasing super fast like that, it can snap back and hit your arm if your arm is not straight, and that hurts. That is called something snapback or something like that. In my class, there was a whistle. They had one whistle meant that you went up to the line, so to fire and stuff and set your feet. Um, Second thing is these. Third thing is if there was two whistles, then that means that you start shooting. You can knock an arrow, and you don't do it before that, but you knock an arrow, and then you can start firing and whatever until you run out of arrows. Um, and then the fourth thing is if there's three whistles, then that means you run down and collect your arrows. Okay, so that's about all for my guide. I mean, I there's obviously more. If you want to find out more, you can search it. Google knows better than me. Um, Not everything I said was 100% how things work, and I repeated some things, but uh, yeah, that's about it. This is vital to the film.